Hello, everyone. This is the last talk of a wonderful, wonderful year at an amazing venue. Now, for many of you, if you're like me, your head is probably buzzing, almost overflowing, with people that you've now met and that you want to hook up, sync up with as you come out. Right? It's going to be a long, long talk. Not that. So yes, people that you want to chat with again over Zoom or in person. You also might have a ton of ideas and tactics and inspiration that you're going to be taking back with you. Ideas of things that you want to try, lessons that you've seen, mistakes that people have shared openly and honestly. Your head is probably buzzing. For others, you might be like me, and it's now gotten to be the blur stage, where you had so many different pieces of information you can't even pick them out anymore. It's all just this amorphous blob. Either way, when you return to your desk, you're going to be hit with lots of different work to do, lots of different ideas, lots of things that you need to think about. Now, my talk today is not going to be a panacea. It's not going to be a huge cure that's going to tell you exactly what to do. But what I'd like you to do is to realize that as a company and as yourselves, we all need to figure out how do we work together and as individuals to do less more. So to begin, I want us all to take a breath. I'm going to count to 5, and for those 5 counts, you'll be breathing in. You'll be holding it for 3 counts, and then you'll be exhaling for 5. Everyone ready? Deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it for 3. 1, 2, 3. Now exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hoping everyone has realized that we've learned a lot over the last few days. We have a lot of things going on. And that we do need to take a moment to reflect, to think, to consider all the things that we have seen and all the things that we've learned. The hard part, of course, is that Atlassian itself is a do-more culture. This is my opinion. I believe it's based in fact, maybe not with p-values in a Maddie-like sense. However, I think we're a company that values adding more features, adding more things, and even personally, each of us, I think we actually take personal pride in being swamped and being busy. We actually think that's a badge of pride. We joke with new hires about drinking from the fire hose, as if that's a good thing. That's a problem. Here's my personal diagnosis of each of us in this room. I believe we struggle with trying to do less because we are all about not letting people down. We fear letting others down. We fear disappointing ourselves as well. I think there's a people issue that we all have. I also think there's a process issue. I think we don't really know how to choose one thing, the most important thing, and how to do it well. So today, I'm not going to have, here's your master plan that everyone can follow and magically you'll be able to do less more. But I actually want everyone in this room to leave victimhood aside, to leave blaming others aside, and to actually think about yourself. This session is all about yourself and about understanding what drives you, what motivates you on a daily basis, and how you can be mindful of what that is and use that to actually start to do less more. So by the end of today, I want us all to be leaving this room feeling like we can own our emotions, we can own our work, and we can own our time. We are all responsible for this. This is a group effort. Yes, Mike and Scott need to quit putting so much pressure on us. Yes, Jürgen needs to stop talking for a moment. But it's also up to us. It's up to each of us to take ownership of what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and what we're doing. And that's what this talk today is about. I'll be using my own story of what happened to me about 8 months ago. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm an old timer. This is my 6th design week. The first was about 25 people in a collaborative workspace that was, even then, was a bit too small for 2 days altogether. But about 8 months ago, I took on a new challenge at Atlassian. I took on a team and a discipline and a domain that I knew very little about, but which I believed in passionately, and that was content design. And I said yes to it, and I immediately tried to do everything, because that's who I am. I get stuff done, so I'm going to do lots of stuff. And this is about my story, but it's also about the things that I did and also can do in hindsight to realize what I did in myself and how I could have done things better. My first insight is that all of us are about emotions. We are not simple creatures. We are all extremely unique. We've had very different life experiences. And I believe that to do less more, we need to identify our own emotions, what motivates us, what we're feeling, in order to own it. So to do that, in the spirit of hindsight being 2020, I have done an empathy map of myself. I expect and encourage all of you to do the same. Now, for those of you who are new to Atlassian, this is one of our plays in the Atlassian playbook, and we typically use it to understand our customers. We want to learn and empathize with them. But I think it's also extremely important to do it on ourselves, especially when we're in situations that we're feeling helpless or powerless, or feeling like we don't know how to control the situation. So when Jürgen first approached me about 8 months ago saying, you know, Karen, why don't you take this on? You're kind of, you know, you've said, and I've shared with him that I was getting kind of bored, which is always a bad sign for me. He's like, why don't you take it on? What did I say? I said, immediately, sure, I can do it. I thought, what does this even mean? What is the team that was formerly known as Information Experience? What is Jürgen hoping for? What does success mean? Is he just giving me something because he doesn't want me to leave? What did I do? I'm like, all right, well, I said sure, so I said yes, so I'm going to do all the things. And over the past 8 months, there are many times that I felt like I was letting people down. We're always very hard on ourselves. I am no stranger to that. And I felt that way on a regular basis because I was trying to do all the things all the time to please all the people. So now it's your turn. Interaction time. I'm going to share with you a couple broad generalizations of different types of people, and I'm going to want you to talk and figure out which one are you. Are you a yes and person, or are you a no because person? Here's my own scientific definitions, okay, my own definitions of each of these. Shouldn't be too surprising. These are people that when you're asked to do something, you immediately say yes, and we can do this, and we can do that. And you build up things. You try to find more things to do, bigger ideas. You even push bigger than the person originally intended. There are also many of us that are no because people. When immediately given some sort of bold new problem or challenge, you're immediately unpacking it and saying, hey, look, we can't do that. We can't change this. We can't make Jira amazing. We can't fix this problem because blah, blah, blah. You're unpacking things. You're finding the blockers. And you're pushing back. Now, neither of these is good or bad. This is just human behavior and human reaction to being asked to do something. So what I want you to do is to think about each, but I want you to turn to the person in pairs next to you. So circular tables aside, I just gave up on that. If there's 3 of you is fine if there's odd numbers, but find your partner. This is going to be your partner for the rest of this talk. Talk to them about whether you're a yes and or a no because. Everyone? Can anyone whistle? I'm trying to speak. I can't. Everyone! Ooh, that was nice. That was super nice. All right, everyone in the room, if you are a yes and person, please raise your hand now. All right, not too shabby. If you're a no because person, please raise your hand. Nice. If you did not raise your hand, Mr. Brandon, it means you're a no because. Because you're unpacking this and diagnosing and analyzing this for the flaws and the weaknesses, of which there are many. I will call you out. So everyone, this is a wonderful part of human nature. We are all different. We are all on different scales and different spectrums of many sorts. Knowing who you are can help you identify where your weak points are. So I'm a yes and person. I find lots of holes, but I also overcommit. I fall in love really fast with big, bold ideas. I'm like, oh, we could totally do that, without really thinking it through. This also means that we can build the wrong thing because I've fallen in love so quickly. ADG arguably had a lot of mistakes around falling in love too quickly. If you're a no because person, one of your challenges is that you might stop too soon. You might see so many mistakes and flaws and problems that you don't want to go any further, and you might stop yourself or your team from going forward. You also might focus on small changes, what's possible right this moment, rather than actually the big, bold vision of where you could be. And so you might really over-rotate on lots of incremental changes that are just kind of tiny little improvements rather than the big, massive steps that we may need to take as we try to help our customers love our experiences. And sometimes you can also get paralyzed because you're so critical. You see problems everywhere that you're afraid to take any step because you see every single one has a pothole. Similarly, but not entirely, I think there's a nice parallel with people that are intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated. I think you all want to know what this is, so I'm not going to go into much detail, but are you intrinsically motivated? Does motivation and what gives you purpose and drives you as an individual, does that come from inside yourself, or is it really about what others see and recognize? What are the tangible outcomes? Is that what motivates you, is actually making a difference in the world? And it's that external recognition that you need. So think about each of these as well. I'm not going to have you choose them. Actually, never mind, I will. So just let's raise our hands. So we're not going to discuss this one. If you believe that you are intrinsically motivated, oh God, one sec, then raise your hand. Very nice. Now be real here. If you feel like you're extrinsically motivated, if you're motivated by others, raise your hand. Pick one. Which one is your tendency, Mr. No Because? This is a really interesting one for me because when you think about doing less more, you think about what is stopping you from doing this. Are you not doing less because you haven't seen a tangible, a valuable purpose for what you're doing? So you're just kind of doing all the things, hoping that something will stick. Do you struggle with doing less because you're trying to please other people? And all those other people are saying, you should do that, and you should do this, and we should do that, and we should do that. So knowing who you are and what motivates you can really help you identify what's holding you back from really do less more. And they have downsides as well. I believe that people that are intrinsically motivated can probably more often be frustrated with others that don't share that vision, don't share that purpose, don't agree with that solution or that vision that you have in mind. You might struggle to get motivated if you don't really understand why we're doing something or why it's important. And you also might even get irritated by meetings because in your mind it's so clear and you have that value that you don't see a need to really talk about it. Again, all my theory, but people that are extrinsically motivated, like myself, struggle with imposter syndrome. Because we depend so much on others for our validation, If that doesn't come, we doubt ourselves. I have many a time wondered if Jürgen's going to fire me. He knows that. And it's hard to realize that it's how to separate yourself from your emotions and your feelings when you're having them in the moment. People that are extrinsically motivated also might struggle to push back because you want to please others. You want to get that validation from others, and you feel like pushing back, arguing, debating, discussing could actually be seen as that they're going to judge you, they're going to not agree with you, they're not going to want to work with you. I also think you can feel left out of meetings, that fear of missing out. Because you're extrinsically motivated, you need that validation. You need people saying, oh, Karen, you should come to that meeting. And then when that meeting happens and they didn't invite you or you find it out after the fact, you take it personally. So once again, I feel like knowing yourself and recognizing these things in a calm moment in your life can help you figure out tactics to recognize it and to deal with it as you move forward in order to do less. These were 3 of the tactics that I've shared. And one more that I will leave you on is to think of, on this case, is to think about your worst self when you are feeling dependent on others or demotivated or irritated versus your hero self. So your villain self. So the villain Karen. Let's see. I get overwhelmed. I say yes way too soon. I will be sucked into Slack in a heartbeat. I can't help it. I'm going to miss it. And if I miss responding to someone, they might judge me. What do? I'm afraid to ask for help. I'm often afraid to share. Now the hero, my hero self. And think about your hero self. For me, in an ideal world, I think before I speak. I use delaying and responding in order to give myself that time. I chunk my time and do all the crap work all at once or all the slack all at once and then spend time actually with deep focus work. I bring others into my problem space, and honestly, a hero Karen doesn't give a fork. Doesn't happen often. So think about yourself, think about who your villain self is and who your hero self is. Because sometimes that's a really easy way to unlock what you're really trying to aspire to be. I know that some folk struggle with different personality types, different contexts, different backgrounds. I cannot cover them all, but here are a couple of my personal favorites. If you're an introvert, like myself, the taking a minute to think is a fantastic tactic that helps you do less more. It gives you a moment to reflect. Doing a deep breathing. In the design leadership offsite the other day, when everyone was just shouting back and forth and talking about things and they wanted to make a decision that moment, I raised my hand and said, hey, look, as an introvert, can you give me just a minute to silently reflect? When you've built a relationship with a team, when you've reflected on yourself, when they've talked about themselves, you're able to do that. You're able to ask for that moment to think. If you're an extrovert, you often have a lot of energy. You want to move that energy in lots of different ways, and you want to keep on talking. Think about how you could redirect that energy in understanding the problem or the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And finally, if you're remote or global, like I have been for my entire Atlassian career, use that natural delay to your best advantage. That can give you the time to think, the time to research, the time to talk with others and get that sanity checking too. It's actually a gift, even if it can be really, really annoying certain times, like this time of year. My next insight is that relationships are two-way streets. You cannot control others, but you can try to understand them. This, if anyone can notice, is as close as I could get to a Jürgen avatar. And so here's my representation of an empathy map of Jürgen when he came up to me and said, hey, look, Karen, you should take on content design. He asked me, do you want to do this? But knowing Jürgen, and I know him well, he was probably thinking, am I in? What does he do? He talks a lot. And what does he feel? And he's been very open. He has very strong opinions, extremely strong, weakly held. Now, this is Jürgen, and I need to be empathetic of true Jürgen. So this is really what he's saying, and this is what he's really thinking. And working with people like Jürgen, working with a diverse audience and diverse people throughout the years, my own next theory came from Design Week a couple years ago, so some of you may remember it, but I still think it's valid. And that's there are people who talk to think, and there are people who think to talk. Now, which one are you? Do you speak out loud in order to crystallize that idea, in order to generate new ideas, in order to process what you've heard? Or do you keep quiet until you really have something to say? Until you believe really passionately or strongly that something is right or something is wrong, and you just need to finally, you can't hold it in anymore? Or do you keep quiet until you really understand what's being asked of you, what you're trying to do? Knowing which type of person you are and which type of person the other people in the room are can be really, really helpful in trying to figure out how do you navigate the situation in order to do the right thing well and not all the things all the time in a frantic, frenetic busyness spurt. In this case, it's a very classic one. I am a think to talk. I need that moment to reflect. I don't always let myself have it because I don't want to let people down. And Jürgen is very classically a talk to think. He brings out tons of opinions. He talks a lot in very roundabout ways. And that's how he's crystallizing that idea. And so by knowing that about him, knowing about that about me, I can now figure out when he came to me and talked to me and asked me about content design, what I need to do. And for me, that was take a moment to reflect, take a moment to think, and realize that some people actually talk a lot without really being clear on what they're asking, what problem they're really trying to solve, or what when they really need to solve it. So it's actually okay to ask. It's okay to see and check how serious someone is about a situation. Now, what I want you to do is start to think about tactics for yourself and the other people that you're working with. I think there are tactics of when you talk to think and they talk to think, because then you're both talking at each other and no one's listening. There's also lots of ones where both of you are thinking and it's just this kind of silent awkwardness. What do you do? So think about yourself, but also think about the others and figure out how to build that relationship. In my case, what I wanted to do, and one of my tactics was I asked for something to see how serious Jürgen was. And it was also a way to get a little bit of help, so I wasn't going to do all the things. In this case, I asked for a principal content designer because I knew that I was not deeply versed in the industry, in the history, in the meaning and purpose of technical writing and information design. If your specific personalities or contexts, we've already talked a little bit, but I'd add a couple more. I had to realize that asking can be a strength. As an extrovert, I'm recommending as a non-extrovert that you just use that energy to diverge on solutions, to not jump on one thing and run. And as someone who is remote and global, realize that when someone's asking you to do something, they have no idea what your day is like. They may have no idea what you're working on or how many people are pinging you on Slack on a daily basis. They may have never opened up your calendar and looked at your calendar. So share that context. Your manager, your teammates are not mind readers. Helping them understand where you are can help work through towards doing a better thing. And finally, coming out of the first day of Design Week, I realized that it's not just knowing yourself and knowing the other person. It is about figuring out how do you build a healthy disagreement, a healthy debate, and some healthy belonging. I do this personally by asking lots of clarifying questions, because that feeds my natural curiosity. It also helps me understand more what's going on. I always start with emotions. I always start with what's keeping you up at night or what are you most afraid of, because it starts the human connection and conversation about this new thing that we need to do and this and that and that. Ask them how they know it's a problem. Why do we need to do this right now? Tell me more. Not in an attacking way, but in a seeking to understand. How big is this problem versus other problems? And what are we hoping to achieve? I also want to know that it is about the human nature. It is about the emotion and having that connection. When I took on content design, one of the things I knew I had to do is to look at 3 areas: the people, the product or the work we were doing, and the process. I made the decision to focus on one, because I at least did that one right. And I focused on the people, because that does come naturally to me, especially being global and being remote and isolated from a lot of the place and a lot of the people. So we've started every 2 weeks, thanks to Alistair, a async team meeting where we'd share thoughts and ideas and comments and meet members of the team. In addition, I added a Trello board and set onto our async meeting, which is in Hello, in Confluence, and used it with a different theme each week to, again, get us to relate to each other as human beings. This is a sample of our Valentine's Day one. And to give a little bit of context on this one, in America, this was our President's Day weekend. And I was frantically trying to get work done, but I was also going up to Tahoe for the weekend. And so I was feeling kind of isolated as the snow was falling. We had just arrived in Tahoe, and it was bucketing down. And I was kind of like all alone as the snow was coming down. And to wake up after opening this board and seeing all the photos and limericks and poems that people had added was just lovely. And having that communication, really creating that sense of belonging as a team was really important for me. We've talked some tactics. Here's a few more. As introverts, when you're trying to do less more, don't start with action, start with questions. I sometimes write them down as I'm going into a meeting, because then I have that space, that moment for reflection. As an extrovert, use your energy to repeat what you just heard. It's kind of fun to repeat back to them. It redirects your energy in a really good, interesting way. It can also make sure that you're listening to the other person as well. And finally, as someone who is remote, own the belonging. And yeah, it's unfair. It sucks that Sydney is having these fantastic conversations you come to in the next morning. But you can own, and it feels isolating, but you can start that human connection, and you can do it in any sort of way. It doesn't need to be live conversation. You can share who you are, share what you're worried about, share your hopes and fears as well. Lead by example. So returning to our diagnosis, I believe as people, especially extrinsically motivated people, we don't want to let others down. I also know that without knowing ourselves, we're not going to get anywhere in order to enable to do less more. So there's tons of process tips we can do as well. I believe we don't know how to choose one thing and focus. And when I think about this area on process, being able to choose one thing to work on and to do it, not 1,000 things, but to do less and more of it. I again try to imagine what would success look like. And I think there's 2 main areas that I'd like you to think about yourself. What is success as a team? And what is success in terms of yourself that you can own? As a team, here's a couple to start. And I think we all know that none of us are doing this consistently, given the stand-up, sit-down exercises we've had throughout this week. Are you working on the right problem? Do you know what success is? And do you know what you're not doing and why? What have you chosen not to focus on this week? As an individual, your success, I believe, you're successful if you have some deep thinking time and some deep working time during the week. That you have effective meetings and effective workshops and sessions. And you avoid getting sucked in. To me, my test here is when I go home at the end of the day, do I remember what I did that day? And it's disturbing how often I don't. And I own that. You own this for yourself. So in terms of how do you get shit done? How do you prioritize? How do you do less more? Well, there are a billion frameworks and prioritization and productivity tips and blogs, and there are a bunch of much better Design Week talks this week that you could pull from. But my question to each of you is, what is stopping you? There's tons of tools. You could eat the frog, which is my personal favorite, of doing the hardest problem or project first every day. But what's stopping you? What's holding you back from that? Now, why is that an excuse? Why are you letting that hold you back? My theory is that unless you really value doing less, unless you stop taking pride in being busy, it's not going to help. So value the focus and believe in doing one thing. My personal example, I was trying to do all the things in very slim, bare bones peanut butter ways. Peanut butter, American condiment. And when I was trying to hire a principal content designer, the one that I was so proud of, I actually asked for, I did the bare minimum because I was doing 1,000 things. So I took the existing job descriptions that we had used 100 times successfully for fantastic content designers on the team. And I said, okay, that's good. I'll tweak it a little bit, ship it, done. And it wasn't until Amanda, our wonderful design recruiter, came back to me and said, I'm seeing a lot of candidates apply that are not the level you were looking for. What's going on? It made me realize that I was taking it for granted and I wasn't focusing on the most important thing. For me to actually do less more, I needed to have strong people all around. I wanted to have a plethora so I could throw a dart. And right now I think I can, so that's good. But I needed to do this, and I needed to focus on it because it would unlock me in so many ways. This is my before and after, just to show you the first line of my job description, my principal designer, after Amanda gave me that feedback. My before was, do you find yourself rewriting onboarding tours? I do. In-app tips or product tutorials in your head? Once I got her feedback, I changed it, and I made it bold. I didn't hold back anymore. And I asked, are you an industry leader when it comes to content design, content strategy, or content-driven product experiences? Now, I can probably still massage that a bit. I did the best I could. But I wanted to be strong, and I forced myself to be strong. And using that, I forced myself to finally sit down and write a freaking Medium article. I forced myself to contact a network and get a podcast out. We started using networking internally, and so we were able to actually find a fantastic woman who'll be joining us in a month, partly through internal networks. Thank you, Lisa. Also, I think, by crispifying what we were looking for and why it was important, by focusing. So our last interaction. Now, I want you to think about yourself. What is stopping you from doing less more? What is in your control and your power? I want you to turn to your partner and talk through a couple tactics you might choose to try to own yourself, to own your work. I'll give you 2 minutes. All right, everyone, bring it back. Does anyone want to share some ideas that they had or something that they talked about?
I'm half stealing Ryan, so this is from Ryan and me now that I'm reflecting on it. But the swallowing the frog, eating frogs.
Eating frog.
Well, I think one thing for us is we get in and super quickly do emails, Slack, like the easy adrenaline hit things. And I've probably for the past year, maybe more, maybe like 3 years, wanted to start with a hard problem first thing in the day. And I haven't done that because I think I'm still tied to those Slack notification adrenaline hits. So that's the one thing I would like to change.
That's awesome. Thanks, Sarah. That's a great one because it is, again, about what's motivating you and what's getting you sucked in, and you'll never emerge once you start that. Just to close, this was my original empathy map of what I felt when Jürgen came to me and asked me to take on content design. Now, what I'd like to say is knowing more about myself, reflecting on what I did well, knowing what I'm doing as I move forward into the future, really focusing on the process and how we're creating great content experiences. I'd argue that I'd like to say, this is what I need. This is what I need from all of you as we move forward. From what does this even mean? I want to be able to think, I can do this. And by reflection, by taking that time, I can do so. Instead of doing all the things, I'm going to sequence the crap out of it. I don't need to do all the things all the time. I can do the most important thing first and rest and relax that after that, the next thing will happen and then the next. I can even ladder them so they build on each other to get to the goal. And instead of feeling that I'm letting people down, I'm feeling bold and optimistic. My call to all of you, as you leave this room, own your emotions, own your work, and own your time. It's up to you. Now to close, my one thing is to ask you to turn to your partner and share your one thing. Not the 5,000 different tactics and things that you chose, but just that one thing that you're going to try, maybe just for next week, maybe just for tomorrow. But that one thing you're going to try to do less more. So do this for 1 minute, and then we'll be closing. Last but not least, my one challenge is look at each other's badge right now, remember the other person's name, and send them a Slack message tonight or tomorrow morning with that one thing. You own it. Acknowledge what you're going to do as you move forward. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy returning to work. Oh, Brett. Yes.
Thanks, Karen. That was fucking loud. That was awesome. Thank you so much. One thing that I noticed towards the end when you described the things that you would do different, they looked incredibly similar to, on a personal level, to on a team or an organizational level in a recent JIRA leadership offsite. I think we ultimately identified the same things that we were doing as an organization and doing too much of. We talked about doing things in sequence instead of in parallel. I was wondering if you'd done any thinking more about how those same things applied to groups of people and to organizations.
Absolutely. I thought about it as much as I could in preparation for this talk. And one of the things I decided to focus on was ourselves. Because while it's easy to blame the faceless, amorphous company, or even a Mike or Scott, or the broader team or product, the patterns are all around, and there are things in our control. So I do suspect there's very similar things all along, and opening that conversation by actually knowing yourself, knowing the other people, actually gets you both solving it at your individual level and the team level and laddering up through to the whole company. That's my theory. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Take your one thing, Slack the person to your side. All right, one more question. You've interrupted my closer, man.
Yeah, I know, but I think it's really important. What's your one thing for tomorrow morning?
Ooh, that's evil. That is freaking evil. And now I'm like, okay, tap dance, what's my thing? I'm having my content design offsite tomorrow. And I've given it to wonderful people in my effort to do less more. I trust them amazingly, and I trust us all to enjoy it. My one thing tomorrow is to lean in, which I hate the phrase, to actually just frickin' embrace it and live in the moment tomorrow, because I don't do that. All right, thanks everyone.